What's up, visionary? I am your host, Clee Davis, your vision actualization mentor, here to help you break down your vision building barriers. And today, we are talking about how to stay motivated throughout your visionary journey. As a visionary, throughout life, you're constantly going through ups and downs of your journey. Well, pretty much everyone goes through ups and downs of their journey, but as a visionary, it's so much harder because you always are visualizing where you want to be. You always have a picture of what you want the future to look like. And it always seems like you're always so far from getting to that point. We often hear the phrase, trust the process, or it's a marathon, not a race, or one of Gary Vee's top 5 favorite words other than empathy, binary, and probably the F-bomb, patience. But patience is so dang hard. How do I stay motivated throughout the journey? So today I brought on the show Colby Cornell, who has gone through a journey of his own, going from attempted suicide to the CEO of a successful nonprofit organization. Yeah, that's a journey for sure. He shares with us some of his story and the mental processes he goes through to stay motivated throughout his journey, so that by the end of this episode, you'll be able to put into motion some of the practices that he's saying, well, really all the practices that he's saying in this episode, so that you can energize your vision building journey. So next, our visionary profile, please.
Loading. Colby Cornell. Occupation: CEO and founder of Journey of the Mind, Inc. Speaker and advocate for mental health across the nation. Hometown: Clinton, North Carolina. Course creator of Journey University. Billboard quote: trust your journey. For weekly visionary value, subscribe to the show. Enjoy.
The journey has been all across the board. Age 7, sexual abuse. Age 13, molested. Older family member actually allowed that to happen. Age 15, saw my first violent crime, homicide. Age 16, attempted suicide for the first time. I had survived actually crashing my mom's Ford Explorer into a tree. Age 21, praise God for the last time, attempted suicide and surviving. 8 months of cognitive behavioral therapy, and actually getting out and being able to present a hashtag at that time, which was Trust Your Journey, to Damon John, CEO and founder of FUBU, that I had a mission in the movement, he actually directed me to not doing an LLC, but doing a nonprofit. And September 15th of 2017, we got our articles of incorporation. January 3rd of 2018, we became a national 501c3 organization. And many business owners will tell you that the launch is just the beginning, and that's the truth. That's where the work really begins. So going on 2 years now in September, and we were rocking and rolling.
That's great. And coming from that background, I mean, clearly that's a background that is unique to you. What was that turning point? Was it that last time when you were 21, when you were just like, or was it someone else that kind of like turned you around and say, I need to turn this energy into something positive?
It was definitely myself. I've always been my own biggest motivation. Well, I take that back. I've always been my own greatest inspiration. And I think that's because I've seen the growth and I've seen the challenges that I've faced, and I always came out on top. I think there's nothing special directly about me. I am gifted. I am anointed by God. I do have a gift. But I think one of the greatest gifts I do have is just the ability to outlast. It's nothing special, right? It's just the fact that I've been able to outlast some of the things that other people didn't make it through. And I think that's a gift in itself. So for me, being able to turn that purpose into power, turn that pain into purpose and use that purpose to drive power was important for me. So how do you do that, right? Well, you take the thing that is your weakness and you make that a strength. So for me, mental health represented that in my life. It was actually during that 8 months that I realized that it wasn't just a depressive state that I was dealing with, but it was actually a disorder, bipolar disorder, type 1. So, and that self-discovery and going through therapy and counseling, really going to that realization of who I was and what I was dealing with, and you get to learn different things, right? So I have family members who have diagnoses in my family. You know, the cousin that you might see at a cookout or something, and nobody really talks to them, or the kid that's kind of acting up in the corner. You're like, what's up with them? And you may not know that the kid might have autism or might have Asperger's or whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of that happens within the African American family and that family unit, the things that we don't talk about. But you can't heal what you don't reveal. So for me, without going off on a tangent for you, it really becomes a point of, have you ever read the 48 Laws of Power?
I have not. I've heard of the book though. I have.
Bro, it's like that. You gotta read it. All right, so like
put it on the list.
Yeah, it's one of those where you have to turn your, you know what I'm saying, your pain into purpose. And for me, in some ways, helping others has helped heal myself.
Wow. And kind of what I want to ask as well is, why do you think, you know, we're both brothers here, both African American young men. Why is it, you know, so difficult sometimes for us to kind of just get into, like, I feel like, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like your experience could have been changed earlier, you know, or like depending on your environment or in your culture, by like seeing these incidents happening and then, you know, figuring it out from there. But I feel like sometimes we kind of just push things off as a culture. Why does that happen?
I think our parents raised us with the greatest capacity that they have, and we have to do a better job of how we raise our children and break the narrative of the generational curses. If you think about being a first generation college student, right? You have more education than your parents. Like, yeah, I get it, respect your elders and all that, but if you're a first generation college kid, you have more education than your parents, but they have greater life experience. Right. And I think when we bring education with life experiences, especially in how we raise our children, we can better prepare them for the future. One thing I can say in my life is that if you don't prepare somebody for the world's going to have to do that job. So we have to do a better job with true preparation. And it goes so much deeper than just family dynamics. It's financial literacy. Why do we buy everything but don't own anything? Yeah. You know, like, these are the things that we have to take a step towards figuring out what is the miseducation and where is the lack of representation when it comes to that knowledge that is there and seeking that education. And some of the greatest education you're not going to get in the classroom. I'll be the first to tell you, it's going to be walking out your front door. Mm-hmm. It is what you'll learn in life, but that gravity that gives you something, that basis to come back to, and that true understanding, that's going to come from, if you know better, you do better. This is just the facts.
All right, so let me ask you this, man, and I know you will have a good answer because you've been through it yourself. You're an entrepreneur yourself. In fact, you have multiple businesses. So in the vision building process or in the goal attainment process, mental health or being in tune mentally could be, I feel like, one of the hardest things, because there's so many ups and downs in that process that it could be extremely difficult to stay, you know, on the straight and narrow as far as your mental health. What are some things that people can do through that process? That's inevitable. That's going to happen, and it probably will make you better because of it. But sometimes people get thrown off the path or knocked down completely and never get back up. So how can people go about that?
Well, first I would tell, it's a few, Mr. Davis. Journaling. That's something that my therapist suggested to me that really did become a great help for me. Yeah. I think journaling, and actually being disciplined to journal too, but like cracking open a book, writing down what it is that you want to see. I made a habit of that myself. And I may not do it every day. I'm not going to sit up here and cap like I do, but I do try to make sure that at least once a week I'm journaling. I'm putting things on paper that I actually want to manifest in my life and make changes with. And when you can see that, you can hold yourself accountable. Something that I talk about in my online course is 4 different points, like preparation, position, practice, and perform. And out of those 4 things, I believe that those are 4 different seasons that we have to prepare ourselves for in life, right? So we work and live in a world that operates off of systems, but we serve a God, if you believe in a higher being, that works in seasons. And as you look at how do you align that and how do you keep your mental state in a great place, you can work a corporate job and be a full-time entrepreneur at the same time, or be a part-time entrepreneur or a full-time entrepreneur once you get off of work at home. I think one thing that oftentimes happens for entrepreneurs when it comes to mental health and different things of that nature is that people allow the outside sources to get in. They allow the outside energy to affect who they are and their identity. When you really know who you are and you lock in on being a king or a queen of that nature, whatever the case may be, those outside factors won't affect your mental state as much. For the person that's struggling that might be listening to your podcast or watching it, I'm like, well, that's so easy for you to say if you've been through this, that, and the third. Well, that's the benefit of having great individuals like you who are providing that education and providing those platforms for these practices to be learned, because any therapist that you go to will tell you that the work is on you.
Yeah.
You can pay someone to sit on a couch and they'll teach you the techniques and everything. But at the end of the day, if you're not putting that into practice in your life when you get off of that couch or outside that room, it's not going to work. So go buy a journal. If you can't get a journal, take some scrapbooks. Whatever you got to do to put that in the case. But I believe one that will really help people stay grounded is if you know who you are, you know what you want to do, even if you don't know your purpose. As my mother would always say, if it's not the thing, it'll be the thing that leads you to the thing. So if you just go ahead and get into the routine of doing what it is you love to do, the universe is going to bring people around you who love doing what you do.
Yeah.
That becomes your community. That becomes your ecosystem. Once you lock into that ecosystem, now even if you don't have it all the way figured out, you're around people who do.
Right, exactly.
And you can find your position.
Oh man, that's good. That's the key thing that I keep trying to say over and over again. Look, I don't have it all figured out either, but I've gotten so far just because of me starting and putting myself in a place and around people who kind of know something, or at least more than I do. They're a couple steps ahead of me. And that's the part that I think so many people struggle with. They get stuck up here and they don't start actually doing the things so that they can find that purpose. Look, my purpose could change, to be honest. Your passions can change in life. But whatever that key thing, if you put yourself in the right space, you'll be able to go in those different directions and fulfill those different roles in ways that you probably didn't even see yourself doing before you put yourself in that environment. But another thing I want to get to that I think is just really common are two things: discouragement and negativity. I kind of want to touch on those separately. First one, discouragement. What are some practices some people could use when they're just discouraged?
I believe that what's so important when you're discouraged or when you're down or when you're going through, it is important to do the things that you love. And I say that because it awakens you. It reminds you of who you are, whether it's going and listening to your favorite songs that morning or creating a playlist. I have a playlist for not necessarily when I'm down, but when I'm too far up and I'm not calming myself down. I have a playlist for that on my title. I think I have a favorite sermon that I listen to. I got many favorite sermons that I listen to on my YouTube mix. I have friends that are very close to me. The few that I do have that are very, like my brothers and sisters, as I would call them, that I can call, who now have become more emotionally intelligent. That's the key. If you're gonna call someone, call people or call the friends in your life that are emotionally intelligent, that really know how to articulate and speak to those feelings and those emotions. I think it's important for people to recognize that something is bigger than themselves. I couldn't tell you how many times I was having a really rough day and I just went and volunteered somewhere. Or I went and donated some clothes I wasn't wearing to the Goodwill. I did a routine or a practice that was outside of my norm, and it jogged my memory. It reminded me of who I was. It reminded me of my place in the universe. And I think that's so important because the worst way to go to slip from sadness into depression, or the easiest way rather, is to sit in it, is to wallow in it, is to eat the bad foods and not exercise and those things. It's only going to elongate that process more. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely tell anybody in that case to get active, whatever active means. If active is reading a book, if active is volunteering, if active is just taking a walk in the morning. I love taking walks on the walking trail, the greenways. That's free. It don't cost you a dime. Yeah. Put sneakers on and go do it. I think we have to do a better job of creating that activity and realizing that this is just flesh and blood, right? This is it. But there is a spirit that is inside of you that is connected to everything that's around you. So when you cut yourself off from everything that is around you, you're really strangling your true self. It's really what you're doing.
Yeah. And that perfectly segues into the next thing, which is negativity. The thing that you usually hear is, I'm cutting out. I'm cutting. No negativity in here. But what you just said, sometimes when you cut yourself from so many things, you could strangle, the things that were providing you that blood in your life that were keeping you up. How do you deal with negativity in negative surroundings or even negativity within yourself?
I'm gonna answer that question with a question. Maybe it's not so much the negativity that people believe they're cutting out, but it could be like it's a mirror, right? Like when you step into therapy and counseling, or even personal development on any level, it's a mirror that you have to turn on yourself. A lot of people don't have the power to turn that mirror on themselves, and the ones who do don't turn that mirror on themselves. I'm gonna tell you why they don't. One, they don't know what they're gonna see. Two, they know what they're gonna see. Or three, they know what they're gonna see. They've seen it before, and they don't like it. Well, it's ugly because when you turn that mirror on yourself, you got some good,
Yeah.
you got some bad.
Yeah.
Everybody in your life, you ain't always treated right. You haven't always been a most upstanding person or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like that mirror is hard for a lot of people. So when I say answer a question of that when it comes to negativity, is it that we always cutting off people that are negative to us, or is it that we always, this is good. Is it that we're cutting ourselves off from people that are negative to us, or are we cutting ourselves from a lesson from people who remind us of who we truly are? Because if you attract what you are, you're a product of your surroundings and your environment. Ooh. So there's a reason why you're in that sect. Right. So you ready to cut everybody off, and you might be the toxic one.
Oh man, you just dropped a bomb. Okay, so here I'm going to ask another question off your question of the question.
Good.
So if you are cutting yourself off from your surroundings, but usually you are the sum of the people that you hang out with, and usually birds of a feather flock together, right? So I still believe that cutting those people off might be a good thing because you're cutting off excess fat, Now you're down to the meat of the problem. Where do you go from there? Because it's not done yet. Once you cut people off, you're not finished. You know what I'm saying?
You don't go anywhere. You gotta live with that now. You gotta stay right there with yourself. That's the point. Is that many people will fill that space with other people. We do it in relationships. We do it in life. I can attest to my own life. I've done it before myself. Instead of just sitting with that. Now this is the point where you do have to do some self-reflection. So this ain't talking about like what we were talking about before with depression. I don't want people to get confused. There are some points where you got to self-reflect. And that is that space that we're talking about now, where you do make adjustments to your circle. You realize that you're set apart. You realize you got things you got to work on. You have to sit with that and then reflect on those corrective changes that you need to make in that course of action before you dare in approach that other group or before you make that step within yourself. And I think ultimately, like we said before, I think that's one of those big issues and problems with millennials at this point is that we like company, right? Like we don't want to feel like we're alone. We want like sit with me in my darkness, right? We don't want to be by ourselves in that space, but that's a part of growth. And I think the older generations got that because they didn't have thousands of people that they could go to on social media and feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
Like every given point now, but now you don't have to be alone.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was like, I feel like part of that comes from this social era that we live in. You will never have to truly be alone because you can find whatever you want to find anywhere on the internet.
That's right.
So, but here's another thing that I'm really curious now. Do you think that should this be the process or order of processes? So you're doing your self-reflection. Is it better to find inspiration in others of the direction that you want to go, or to find the inspiration within yourself and surround yourself with that inspiration that you found within yourself already? I don't know if that makes sense. I said a lot of words.
It's better to find that inspiration within yourself because you can end up having people lose inspiration around you. And if your success is dependent on their presence, then you'll be lost. I say that to say when I started my nonprofit organization, we had at one given time, we had about 50 volunteers on a bi-weekly basis working at Montessori school within the community. as the work got more serious and as it got longer and the hype of philanthropy kind of started to wear off, the numbers started to dwindle. It was my mission. It was my drive. The organization was started. But by the end, I ended up with about 10 people who I rock with heavy to this day, who are board members, who are my vice president. She's in the clinical mental health program at A&T. She's going to be a therapist as well. It ended up being those 10 wolves out of 100 sheep. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to knock those people. Everybody has their own journeys in life, whatever the case may be. But to your question of inspiration, you can't be, if it's your vision and you're the engine, you can't be dependent on everybody else to drive, baby. You got to do that yourself. Yeah. And you hope that through that course of action that the universe brings you some other wolves, some other like-minded people like you. And get this, those are your running mates.
Yeah. That's when you find out who's really your ride or die. Yeah.
It's really there for you.
I think that's honestly a lesson that I learned this week. This week was the first week in 44 weeks that I didn't release a podcast episode on Tuesday. Things have I've been working in a new space. I got a new job and things have been happening.
Congratulations, King.
Appreciate it, man. So things just didn't work out as far as me getting an episode out this past Tuesday. And I was also feeling discouraged. I didn't quite have the motivation that I had before when I was doing the show and things like that. And I was going literally everywhere. I was listening to different podcasts. I was going on YouTube. I was looking on the internet. I was talking to people, looking for inspiration anywhere I can. I was like, man, I need to get inspired. I need to get that back. It didn't happen until I sat down with my journal, wrote down, why am I doing this? And reflected within myself and reflected with my God who is in me, and really sat down and like figure stuff out by just reflecting. You know what I'm saying? I was not able to find the inspiration in anyone else, even though I've been inspired by those things before. When it came down to it, the inspiration was really in me the whole time. So if I'm saying this to the audience now, if you're looking for inspiration by going to YouTube, going to other people, going to Facebook, going to Instagram, that's okay, but that's not where your inspiration really lies. Your inspiration is within yourself. And if it's relying on other people, you might be slightly on the wrong path. That might not really be where you're supposed to be at. I kind of want to segue into more of what you're doing. I see you got the Journey is Mental hoodie on. That's some nice merchandise you got right there.
Appreciate it.
I want to get into what is Journey of the Mind Incorporated and what is it all about?
Yeah, so as I stated earlier, our focal points of the organization is mental health, personal development, and travel within underprivileged communities. So, of course, the beef of our programming that we do is pertaining to mental health within the community. In 5 years, our goal is to be a private practice, so we can be able to perform therapy and counseling services for everyone from all different cultural backgrounds across the spectrum. Personal development is another key point that when founding the organization we saw was important as it becomes to that education gap, right? That knowledge gap that is there, financial literacy, knowing how to manage your finances. If we knew coming into college in 2013 in my group that we could take that $2,000-$3,000 refund check and we could flip it, or we could get stock at that time in Amazon, or if we had that understanding then, I imagine where my friend group would have been now. For many who are already successful. So personal development was something that was so important in taking those proactive steps of learning. And then travel is one thing too. Speaking to underprivileged communities, I thought about how, for me growing up in Title I school zone in a very rural area and things of that nature, how beneficial cultural enrichment is, and going outside of your neighborhood and seeing how people from different diversities and different backgrounds live, how they interact and how they do things. I believe that was so important. So these were components that we decided to put together into the nonprofit organization to really build a catalyst that all things that are great can come out of. So it's an honor to be able to serve as the CEO of this organization, to see how it's grown. I think being with you tonight in this conversation is a confirmation to me to keep pushing. You're the second person I talked to today that just got a new job. A young black king that just got a new job. I just had another friend that graduated before me I spoke to earlier today, who's a photographer, videographer, moving to Atlanta. And we were just talking, just like, man, it really is a journey. I myself was unemployed for 9 months, graduated, got the dream job, went corporate, got laid off, got into grad school 9 months before I got another role in a totally different industry than what I got my degree in. God's timing is perfect. It is undefiled. It is the realest thing that there is. And when it's your time, it's your time. Nobody can take that away from you. And I think whether you're a young believer or whether you're somebody who is passionate about anything, it's important to realize that there's something bigger than you, right? And what's going to drive you to the things that are bigger than what you can imagine is at the end of the day, doing what you did yourself is, why did I get started? Why? Because now you can look back on those 70 videos and you'll be like, I did this with less, but now I can do more with more.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's the real. Like that I think is every entrepreneur's goal, is to be able to get the finances from whatever standpoint that you are. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's everybody's thing. I know with me, going back into a corporate position and being postgraduate, you know, I have a lot of postgraduate friends who are doing really well. I have some who people would say that aren't, but they're in their passion and their purpose. I think everybody wants to have what it takes or have the finances to really drive their business. And we don't talk about that enough as millennials for what it takes. Why? Because our parents' dream job was to work 40 years and get the gold watch and, you know, sip tea at McDonald's or Bojangles on Saturday morning. But what do you do when now there's 19-year-olds who are millions of dollars and they're sipping tea in a Lambo and they're 19 years old and they made one decision and it changed their life and changed their family's life? So I say that to say kudos to you, man. I salute you, and I think it's amazing what you're doing, providing this catalyst and platform for others. I'm happy.
Thank you, bro. I really do appreciate that. It's reinforcement, and I love surrounding myself with people who are like-minded on a journey of their own, and I love to support that myself because I know people have supported me, and I wouldn't be where I am without that support. And you referred to two things through the course of this interview so far. You said God works in seasons, and God's timing is the best timing. We don't know what God has in store for us. So that takes me to the next point. Being it, I'm making sure I'm reading this right. Being it, when God saves the best for last, 28 days to recognizing your winning season. What is that, and what does the audience need to know about it?
Oh, man, you done your research. I love it. Being it, I actually created an online course to help postgraduates that were dealing with postgraduate depression. I actually made the course while I was unemployed and looking for a job myself. And while I was grinding, I was living off of savings and other entrepreneurial pursuits and ventures that I had going on. I felt like there were some things that people didn't learn. Like we learned in undergrad, the internship, you know, how to wear the suit, how to do the interview and the job. But there's a gap of people who don't get those corporate roles coming right out of school. And it's like I had so many friends who had to move back home. Had so many friends that had to move back into the hood, back into the projects, back into those spaces. And it's like, you got this accomplishment, you got this degree. Hey, I made it. Now what? Right. So there are some proactive steps. There's some education and knowledge about seminars that are in your city or community college classes for free certifications. There's things of that nature that I felt like people need to know about to continue to build themselves and make themselves competitive to be able to get an opportunity. I had the opportunity to go to House Studios at DC with Wale's producers in high school. And while I was there, I'll never forget, one of the producers told me, you got to work to get a chance to get a chance. If that ain't a sermon right there, then I already preached for us. You have to work to get a chance, to be considered.
Yeah.
So when you think about it like that, at the end of the day, it does come down to God's time. And at the end of the day, it comes down to just positioning and having all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed when you get into that position of opportunity. But where preparation meets the practice, meets the opportunity, and God sprinkles that anointing on it, you can't lose, man. But I think with this course, what I do is I do chronicle different components, the different modules within every set of what does the season of preparation look like. Because you got to be prepared, right? You got to be prepared. You got to know where it is you're trying to go, what it is exactly that you're trying to do. What does positioning look like? Whether it's going to those events and seminars, where it's finding the right mentor, because every mentor is not the mentor for you. finding people who do what you do. That's what that chronicles. And then you have the practice. So that's putting those things into action, putting those things into form, working on those proactive things to take you to where you need to be. And the last one is perform. That's go time. That is trusting your journey to the max. And that's something that I live by. And I believe 100%, because at the end of the day, it is your journey, it is your walk. And there's a lot of education, like I said, between that gap that I saw of people who to this day, I know that still haven't landed that role within their major, or have to go back to grad school because they couldn't get a job. I know plenty of scenarios like that too.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yep,
just
I've
like,
heard of that
man,
too.
instead of, it's better to go back to school and have more loans than to be home.
Yeah.
It's real.
It's real. It is real. And
it's real.
Man, that post grad, even beyond that, because it's a trickle down effect, man. And it could start after school and could continue for years. But I'm just happy that people like us and people who are even ahead of us that we are aspiring towards are providing the information. I just like the internet is such a good thing and such a bad thing at the same time. I mean, people are going to be able to listen to this podcast because of the internet, but people could get misled so many different ways because of it as well. But I'm glad that we have the resources that we do to spread this knowledge and spread this wealth and spread this value to people that need it.
For sure.
So with all the things that you've been through in your short life, still being a young person, and you could have a time machine and go back to Colby, whatever period, what would be the period you would go back to? What age, and what would you tell yourself?
Age 7, and I would tell him how beautiful he was. I would tell him how gifted he was. I would tell him to continue being curious, continue to be inquisitive, continue to have an answer for everything, or at least try to find an answer for everything. I would tell him that even in his meekness and his humility, to recognize his kingship. I would tell him to love himself and to take that time in the early age to find out what loving himself meant when it wasn't taught to him. That's what I would tell my 7-year-old self.
And you just touched on something that I didn't even think about until you just said it. There's this term, I'll just say hashtag self-love, that is a thing. What does that really mean? I feel like sometimes people feel like, oh, self-love is me spoiling myself or me taking care of myself, my health, or, treating myself to a bubble bath. What really is self-love to you? Self-love
is your routine practice that you do that provides you a greater level of wellness. So it's not just going to get some ice cream if you're overweight, right? Like, it's live your best life. Don't get me wrong, but like it's not something that's gonna harm you. See what I'm saying? It's more about maintenance. It's the maintenance that you do for yourself. It's heightening your mind and your level of thinking that you're reading, as opposed to listening to your favorite trap song that may not have that much meaning behind it. Replacing that 30 minutes or something in the gym with a podcast, or replacing that with some Dr. Miles Monroe. Go get you some Juanita Jones. Go get you some Eric Thomas. Howes. What's his name? David Howes.
Lewis Howes.
Lewis Howes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go get you Gary V. Like it's maintenance. So when I look at self-love and how it's taking the root that it has, I just hope that people are getting a lesson from it. Take that space that you're doing for self-love to get a lesson. And sometimes it can be something that's so simple that can be relieving in many ways, or it's something that can alleviate that pain that you're going through.
Got you. Okay, I just want to see what your take on your take on it was, and because I see it so much, and I see like, okay, what is this? What is really this self-love thing? Is it just spoiling yourself, or is it something deeper? But I think that was a good answer. It's maintenance. That's good.
For sure.
And this is my favorite question that I like to ask everyone, because I get so many interesting responses that vary. But if you had a billboard, let's say it's sponsored by Journey of the Mind, or it's your billboard, and people driving down the highway, everyone sees this thing. What would you want that message that you put on there to be for everyone that drives by to see? What would you want to tell them?
Trust your journey.
Trust your journey.
There's nothing else I can tell them, man. Trust your journey. It is yours. It is true. It is authentic to who and what you are. It's the greatest investment that you will ever make in yourself is in trusting your journey, not the person to your left, not the person to the right of you, but truly yours. That is what I would tell them, for sure. With a leaf on the end. Trust your journey. I gotta throw that leaf up there. They gotta know it's real. But yeah, for sure.
Wow, we live in a world that operates in systems, but we serve a God that works in seasons. That's a word right there, Colby. That's a word right there. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Colby. We really do appreciate all the knowledge that you dropped in this episode. Colby referred to 4 primary seasons that you go through in life. That is the season of preparation, the season of positioning, the season of practice, and the season of performance. I dive a little deeper into this concept in this episode's key guide sheet. What is the key guide sheet, you might say? The key guide sheet has all the key points, tips, and advice that were said in this episode in one consolidated format, just in case you might have missed anything or you just didn't have time or the ability to write notes. If you are serious about building your vision, you're going to download the key guide sheet. The link is in the show notes and the description, as well as any contact information or resources for Colby. As always, I will be back with another episode on Friday. And until then, keep building your vision every day. Peace.
Hey guys, Clee here. Thanks so much for listening to the Build Your Vision podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would think you did if you stayed all the way to the end. The best thing that you could do to help support this show is by sharing it with somebody. By you just taking a few seconds to recommend this show to somebody, you are making a huge impact, not only on the success of this show, but possibly on that person's life.